Good evening, everyone. This is Nicholas Sarwark, Chairman of the Libertarian Party. Thank you for joining us for another Libertarian Party TV town hall. Tonight, we're going to cover an industry that has been hit very hard by COVID-19. The restaurant and bar industry, the hospitality industry, took a massive hit in the midst of a pandemic where an infection is transmitted by crowds. Some of the first orders and CDC guidance about not having people go to bars or restaurants really hit that industry hard. We wanted to talk to people who are in that industry, either as restaurant or tavern owners or as servers on the front lines who are not able to make their living anymore, to see how they're adapting, to see how they're coping, to see what they think about how we move forward from this, and really talk about how the economy is changing, what kind of economic dislocations people are feeling in the hospitality industry, what they think the future is going to bring, and what it means that we have this huge spike in unemployment, why that's important, and what is possibly going to happen afterwards. If anyone's been watching the news, you've probably seen in the last 3 weeks, unemployment applications, new applications for unemployment benefits have gone up to almost 17 million across the country. And it's running about 6 million a week. And that is a huge number. It's a shocking number, but it's not an unexpected number, because if you have entire industries and segments that are no longer able to operate, the people in those industries are going to be laid off. That's just a natural occurrence that's going to happen. And we need to figure out, how do we get through this? So our first guest tonight is a member of the Libertarian National Committee, Stephen Nikela, who is not only a member of the National Committee, but he's also a restaurant owner and operator. And Stephen, welcome to LPTV. Do you want to tell people what restaurants you have and how they've been affected?
Certainly, and thank you for having me on today, Nick. It's an honor to join everyone. And I am a franchisee for Wendy's, Dairy Queen, and we also have the Island Grill, which is a full-service restaurant in Alamorada. And we've been operating in the Keys and North Carolina for the last over 20 years now. And we've never seen anything quite like this. Through hurricanes and everything else, there's never been such a severe business interruption quite like this. And the Florida Keys, where I'm actually from, I'm up here in North Carolina because we're opening up a brand new Wendy's in Moyock. So we're just up here for the week to see that through, which in itself has been an interesting challenge. But we're eager to be open. And back in the Keys, things are just absolutely devastating. About 90% of our economy is in the service industry, and when you take away the tourists, you take away the businesses, the restaurants, the hotels, the bars, everybody's affected. Even the secondary businesses like the travel industry or the water sports or the fishing. Our economy has been devastated pretty hard, and the majority of workers down in the Keys have been furloughed. Most of the people I know are out of work and are currently either attempting government assistance, which at this time has been almost impossible. The Republicans even called Florida's current reemployment website a shit sandwich, which it most certainly is. People are trying to log in just to get reemployment assistance by logging in at 4:30 in the morning, trying to get in. The website's broken, and so it's a pretty nasty situation. But one thing is for certain: a lot of businesses are certainly struggling to get through these times, and it's a lot of them are not going to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So right now we're in survival mode, as are a lot of the employees, and currently us down in the Keys, we're still recovering from Hurricane Irma, which hit in 2017 financially. We're still recovering. The Island Grill restaurant is still being rebuilt from the hurricane, and we're actually planning to move that to early next year, despite opening now, which wouldn't make any sense. Food banks in South Florida are 400 to 800% over regular capacity, and they're struggling to meet demand because workers are sick, and they're using the excess from the agricultural sector to fuel a lot of those care packages. But currently it's a tough situation.
So if you could just as a business owner who's in the restaurant industry, walk me through the timeline of what you were doing. When did you start seeing some impact from COVID-19? Was it not until there were executive orders, or were you seeing something before that? And what does the timeline look like for you?
So with COVID-19, I was following this development since January, but it didn't really come to effect until about around March 14th was the weekend where it really hit the fan. That's when the changes really started taking place. About the middle of March, my girlfriend who works down at the Southernmost Beach Resort down in Key West, they're a high-end resort there, and typically around that time they see near 100% capacity. So they were starting to be a little bit slower. It was still a busy time, but they were down slightly. We did have a lot of the more regular hotels like Hilton and Marriott. They were full of spring breakers, and so the spring break business was booming. Around that time, uh, the cruise line industry decided to stop entering the port of Key West, so that immediately took us down a peg. We expect about 100,000 passengers to come off the cruise ships every month in Key West during our busy season, and without that, we immediately felt the impact. Right around the time when, the Monroe County and the city of Key West started passing ordinances to cut down on tourism and to cut down on the bars and restaurants and alcohol sales. So they actually it was on the day of St. Patrick's Day, they decided to close down all the bars at 5 o'clock. So here everybody was in DeVal Street, dressed up in green and ready to go out and drink and have a good time. All these spring breakers, young people, going out to have a party. And then at 5 o'clock, the bars closed and people started leaving. And from there, we saw a gradual decline day after day. Restaurants were still allowed to sell alcohol. They ended that over the following days. And they continued to clamp down on restaurants to be carry-out only, and then non-essential businesses were forced to shut down until finally, as we speak, there's actually a roadblock coming into the Keys that only residents are allowed in, and anybody who flies in has to self-quarantine for 14 days. So the situation escalated dramatically, and currently there's a lot of businesses that are temporarily closed and people that are out of work.
What have you done as a business owner with regard to your employees? Did you try and keep everybody on staff? And tell me about how that decision-making process worked for you.
Certainly. So in the restaurant industry, your profit margin's about 10%, less than 10% typically. Your labor cost at any given time, we shoot for 32% is the industry average, and that includes payroll taxes, which are a big part of that. And obviously, when sales decrease, you have employees that they're not getting paid any less. So immediately we have to decide we need to cut hours. So we go based off of volume, and right off the bat during the peak of the crisis, or I guess really right now, up till now, we've seen about a 40% decrease in sales over our seasonal averages. So we're down quite a bit in the QSR, which is the fast food world. So we've had to make decisions to conserve labor because this really is survival mode for businesses. So we've had to make tough decisions about cutting hours, cutting staff, referring people to, fortunately, to the reemployment system, and hopefully they get a reemployment check if they can actually get through the website and get set up, which is so far no one I know has gotten a reemployment benefit. And the majority of folks can't even get on a website, so it's a huge disaster. But businesses need to conserve as much cash flow as possible. So there's a lot of going to the banks to refinance, to ask for deferred interest payments only, or forbearances. So businesses are trying to pull every trick in the book to try to maximize cash flow and minimize their overhead. We've cut down on trash pickups per week. We've done everything we can to nickel and dime our way through the situation. And that has included cutting labor, unfortunately.
So I just want to, kind of step back and put this into a little bit of perspective for people. I did not know this, but apparently there's over 1 million restaurants in the United States, which is about one restaurant for every 330 people. And you were telling me before the show, can you just share with people how many restaurants fail in the first year or the second year? What's the normal failure rate for a restaurant if one opens, and what drives that if there's not an infectious pandemic?
Certainly, during the good times, the average failure rate for a restaurant during the first year is 80%, and the 80 to 90%, I think it's 90%, and then during the 3 years after that, it's 80% of that 10%. So the failure rate's 90% in the first year for restaurants, and then it's 80% of the 10% that survived that first year go out of business. So the failure rate for restaurants is very high, and the reason why is because the restaurant industry requires a lot of capital expenditure to get started. Profitability is key, because in the restaurant industry, we have two main variables. You have your food cost and you have your labor cost. And if you don't control those two variables and keep your expenses in line, failure is very, very easy. And then when you compound that with your payroll taxes and your liquor licenses and everything else, things add up. A lot of people have the misconception that in QSR and fast food that we're making millions of dollars a year and we're making all profit, which is simply not true. We go based off of survival, and in reality, our profit margins are very low, if any.
So in other countries that, people have told me that they don't have the same kind of restaurant requirements with, large dining rooms and lots of licenses and big kitchens and lots of staffing and parking and all that. There's a whole industry in other countries where somebody puts pictures of food on Instagram, or a little abuela in her, house makes tamales, and then people send an email or make a phone call, or she just goes around the neighborhood. That's not something that we see a lot in the United States. Do you see that as being something that we might see more of as we come into an environment where people don't want to go out into crowds as much?
I would hope so. I think definitely the industry is making a move towards carry out and delivery, which has already been gaining steam in the last few years. Companies like DoorDash and Grubhub and Uber Eats have been getting a huge market share. And in some cities, you actually have what's called dark kitchens. And dark kitchens are restaurants, let's say like Wendy's, where you would have just the kitchen and it would only be delivery. So there'd be no physical restaurant to go to, but it would only be delivery. So certainly those options, I think, are the future. I think businesses are adapting to the new environment. Carry out is a lot of businesses have been adapting to carry out during the pandemic to decrease the chances of infection. But delivery has been the main driver during these times, where a business that's normally, they're probably down to about 5 to 10% normal capacity, is doing probably all carry out and delivery business, or mostly delivery business. As far as being able to just, text your neighbor or somebody making a pie or something and putting it up on Facebook Marketplace and having them deliver it, those things would be great. But unfortunately, it is a highly regulated industry in a lot of ways, and I hope we can see some more community sharing of resources in that way, where people can help each other without having to worry about repercussions. But industry-wise, we're definitely heading towards, I think, more delivery-centric, and unfortunately, we've had to take a crash course in that for a lot of businesses that don't normally deliver.
What do you see as sort of the positive aspects of this, or what do you see as the light at the end of the tunnel? A lot of people are we're in the middle of it right now. We're in the crisis, and a lot of people are getting pretty down. So what do you see as the light at the end of the tunnel? And is there anything that you yourself are doing to try and help the people who are in your industry, or, whether directly or indirectly? What are you doing to try and help people in the community as the government kind of keeps failing in helping anybody?
Absolutely. Well, we had a local newspaper reach out to us the other day. They're actually running ads for all the businesses, free ads to tell, to say what businesses are open. We gave them the whole office a bunch of Frosties and chicken nuggets as appreciation. I see a lot of businesses coming together. I see a lot of businesses donating excess food to food banks. I see a lot of businesses that are out in the community giving away free food on their front porch. I see a lot of people coming together. I see a lot of the NRA, the other NRA, the National Restaurant Association, is giving away $500 grants to people in the industry to help support them. A lot of the corporate offices, or the corporate, like for instance, Wendy's corporate, Dairy Queen corporate, they're doing what they can to source masks for employees, thermometers, things like that, to keep our customers and our crew safe. So we're trying to do what we can right now in the moment to get us through this as safely as possible. And I think, the light at the end of the tunnel here is that, we had this in 1918 and we got through this. And I think the 1918 Spanish flu was actually a lot worse than this was. And we managed to get through it, and we'll get through it again. And I think what we're going to see is probably a lot of shift to new technology in the future, like delivery that we mentioned, and other ways to minimize the interactions between people for hygienic purposes. I think a lot of full service restaurants are going to open, with people apart in the restaurant and things like that, to minimize any kind of infection. So, I think right now it's hard to see any light at the end of the tunnel, but I think there will be some restructuring here that could potentially change the way that we eat out.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Stephen, for joining us. We're going to keep you around, but I want to talk to Mike Kane, who is down in the Florida Keys. He is a bartender in Key West, or he was up until recently a bartender in Key West. He's been also shifting into the real estate business, and I just wanted to get a sense from Mike. What was it like being on that behind the bar? Being a server rather than an owner when everything hit. And let us know, Mike. Just unmute your microphone first.
All right. So thank you, Nick, for having me on. I think the thing is here, what's going on is that everybody needs to understand the Keys are all dependent on tourism, and tourism represents roughly 85% of our economy down here. And we do have a slower time of the year, which is typically the end of summer and early fall. And what we have are a few busy months, February, March, April, and May, that really constitute about 60 to 70% of our revenues down here are all made during that time. And when the governor shut down all bars, which I happen to be working at one part-time, it was a true shock. It really was. And it really just maybe just take a step back and think, what are we going to do next? And so it was a shock, to say the least. But yeah, it was. It's really terrible. There's a lot of people down here that are already living paycheck to paycheck. They're just doing what they can do to try to stay on this island, and a lot of those people, unfortunately, will be leaving. So,
yeah. With the other bartenders that what are they doing to try and get through this with, just basically their job, or at least the job that they did have, is not something that works right now? What are they doing to adapt, and what are they doing to help each other? Are they getting any help from the government? What are you seeing with, your friends who are also in this same spot?
Most people are trying to file for unemployment, but have had such a bad experience with the website that they're not able to. Unfortunately, just our economy down here is so based on tourism. Right now, for example, when we talk about helping each other out and trying to get through this, for example, the bar I work at, we have live music from open to close every single day. And the musicians are now getting on, and they're doing live streams, which is great, and they're taking online tips. But unfortunately, that's really just a small portion. The bartenders I know are all just basically living off their savings, and I do know a few that have already left, and they're leaving the area. So due to high cost of living down here. So
has anyone that have they shifted into things that are growing right now? Things like delivery, or whether it be grocery or package, or restaurant delivery services, things like that. Have you seen anybody trying to shift to other jobs? And is that something that is even viable in a place that is so tourist driven when you can't really have tourists?
Well, it's funny. We always joke about down here, everybody works two jobs, myself included. But I have seen a few friends that were already driving Uber. Now they're moving to Uber Eats. So to answer your question, yes. But those are the people that are already pretty much set up on it. There's really not much else to do in terms of that. So.
And has that, so your other job is, real estate. Have you seen, what is that doing to the real estate market in a tourist place like Key West? Is that something that more people are wanting to come down there, or are fewer people wanting to come down there or get a second house or something like that?
Well, we haven't seen any prices move considerably either way. And I have a strong inclination that's because of the interest rates being where they are, historical lows. So it should be interesting. But just to note, getting back to my point about how everybody has two jobs down here, my wife, she's a full-time teacher. She teaches at a charter school in Key West. And her second job is she's the sales coordinator for a catering company. Now, the catering company is run by a friend of ours who also owns a few restaurants, and he runs the catering company out of the kitchen there. And it's been due to the shutdown here, there's been no new bookings whatsoever, and nothing but cancellations and reschedules. So my wife, who works on that, isn't earning any income from herself as a wedding sales coordinator, as her part-time job, which was actually a very lucrative thing for her.
Yeah, it seems like, we were talking a little bit with Steven. One of the things that is something that it doesn't seem like we're going to be able to get away from, regardless of what the government orders say, is these large crowds of people don't seem like they're going to be something people want. I know I was traveling, officially and for pleasure in the weeks leading up to, the recommendation that people not travel at all. And I was already seeing mostly empty airports and hotels that were a lot less full, and just people trying to avoid crowding together. And with, the changes with the amount of death that's starting to hit, what do you see ways where some of these industries, like a wedding industry or, a caterer for a large party, do you see ways that they think they can adapt to a time when people aren't going to be wanting to get into close proximity or crowds? Or do you think that that's just something that might be a longer term change?
Well, when I look at my friend who owns QS Catering Company, I have a strong inclination that he'll market strictly towards more of a drop-off catering for small on a smaller scale. But it's really going to be impossible for him when 80 to 90% of his businesses are weddings, and they're just not happening down here, for him to make up for that revenue. And so I'm sure that he'll be able to adapt. He's very capable, but it's going to be extremely difficult. He's definitely going to have to change his target audience and his target market, and have to go from there.
And what has it been like, being just in Key West with what's going on right now? Is it really quiet? Are people concerned? And have you guys had serious impacts yet and had many cases, or is it still pretty well contained with, kind of the shutdown and not letting anybody in?
Well, it's been extremely well contained. Last I checked, there were 51 cases confirmed or populate in the county. There were 50 people have tested positive in the county. And actually, as a matter of fact, 24 of them were in Key West. And our population in Key West is 25,000 people, and another 50,000 live in the other parts of unincorporated Monroe County and the cities Islamorada, Key Largo, and Tavernier, Marathon.
Well, that's good. Thank you for joining us, Mike. We're going to keep you around. We'll probably do some questions a little bit later. This is Libertarian Party Television. This is LPTV. Every Thursday night at 7 o'clock Eastern Time, we're doing these town halls to address issues that are not otherwise going to be addressed by the media, and provide a libertarian perspective on issues that are really important to people, and talk to libertarians who have expertise and experience. And the next person I'd like to talk to is Cole Ebel, owner of Ebel's Tavern in Tennessee. Cole, thanks for joining us on LPTV.
Hey, thanks, Nick. Appreciate y'all having me on tonight.
Cole, tell us, you have a tavern. It's where in Tennessee are you? Is your business super seasonal and tourist based, or is it you have a little bit different situation from Stephen and Mike?
It's somewhat tourist based. Springtime, summertime is a big time for us. We're on the confluence of two rivers, about an hour out east of Nashville, Tennessee. Nashville is a huge tourist town, and so we definitely rely on that business. So it does hit us on the tourist aspect, but most of all, it really cuts into our community aspect. Our restaurant really does serve the community. It's a place where we all get together, we talk, we drink, we socialize, and it really is a family environment. And literally, we're being mandated that we no longer have this family environment.
So, what have you done to adapt now that you're not able to have people come into the tavern and sit down and enjoy a drink or a meal with each other? What did you do, both, kind of from a business owner perspective, and then also, what have you done to try and adapt to serve the community? You guys have been there for what, 3 years now?
Yes, so we've been here. We're coming up on 3 years. The way we've adapted is we've instituted delivery. We have a pretty large county with a pretty small population, but we are instituting a full countywide delivery system. We've had to lay off a lot of our servers. I'm able to bring one in on the weekends because it's a little bit busier to help with to-go orders. 100% of our delivery fees go to our drivers, which are pretty much cooks, and then I'm basically fighting to keep my employees fed, to keep food on the table for them, keep money on the table for them. To go has been a big thing. We do have a patio. We cannot serve on that patio, but if you happen to decide that you want to eat your meal there, we're not going to kick you out either. So those are a few of the things that we've been doing on the tavern side of things.
And from the tavern side, one of the things that the tavern culture in America has been around for a long time, and it's the idea of going and having drinks with other people. Have you been able to still provide people drinks that they can enjoy, even though they're not able to stay there and enjoy them? What are you doing to adapt to that? Because I know a lot of food and beverage locations, restaurants, taverns like that, liquor and other alcohol sales are a big part of your revenue stream. So have you been able to adapt to that in this takeout delivery kind of era?
Absolutely. And just to give a shout out to a new upcoming business that's trying to move in, is a local business called The Filling Station, who they've generously donated quite a few growlers to the tavern. I've had friends all over the state who have donated growlers. Basically, growlers are glass containers that can hold beer, is what they're designed for. But we've gone ahead and accented that with we're doing to go margaritas, we're doing to go rum runners, we're basically advertising we're going to deliver a rum runner right to your door. And so that's been helping. Many people have been very supportive. Again, we've got a very strong community here, very supportive people. But what really honestly worries me is when this accordion comes back in on itself, the people who are not retired, the people who are still living off of an income, when they don't have money to spend on things like a tavern, because again, we're an industry that is a choice industry. It provides for a lot of people, but it is a choice. It's not a necessity. So being a little bit of the higher price area, being a 5-star restaurant, those choices will minimalize.
Now, one of the things that healthcare workers have had to face, especially in hard hit places like New York City or Italy, is this idea of triage medicine, where you have to make choices about who can survive and who doesn't get to survive, and the emotional cost of that. And we talk about the restaurant industry in these numbers and this abstract of this many million restaurants and this many fail and all of that, but what is it like when you have to make those decisions as a tavern owner of who gets to keep hours and who doesn't get to keep hours, who gets laid off and who doesn't get laid off? Can you just talk to people about what that's like from a more personal level?
Absolutely. I mean, first off, my employees are my biggest asset. They're my biggest investment. I put a lot of investment into them, both financially and both, as far as just they're people. They're real people. These are real people being affected. So I have to start triaging people I care about. The first ones I had to take off were the servers, because I can't serve. It's illegal right now for me to serve. And it's devastating to them. So that's the first people. Then I start triaging off people who are supporting or going to college if they're still living with their parents. Those are the first people I try to let go of, because then there's people who are supporting themselves. But then after that, if it's someone who's supporting themselves versus supporting a family, I've got to let go of the person who's independently supporting themselves, because at the end of the day, I have to pick who has the most people they're supporting. And then the next step goes, being that we're at about 50% right now, is I don't want to fire anybody. I don't want to shut down, but then I have to start cutting. I'd rather cut pay than fire someone. And being that we had the restaurant statistics earlier, we're a new restaurant. We're not in the black yet. We're still in the red. And so this is just diving us further into the red. I'm not making any money at this. I hope to one day. Again, it's an investment, but at this point, it's just survival. It's just trying to keep food on the table for my employees.
Now, and with that kind of challenge, what are you seeing as far as the government response to what's going on versus you're in a smaller community in Tennessee. What are you seeing with the voluntary community response to kind of getting through this for people who might be older and needing to self-isolate, people who are running into their job just went away? What are you seeing in your community, and what do you think is being done right? What do you think could be done better?
Well, first off, Carthage, Tennessee is a city of 2,300 people. We're not New York City. Our county could fit in 14 city blocks of New York City. That's our entire county of 950 square miles compared to just a few square miles in New York City. We're different, and we should be treated differently as far as regulations go. But what you're looking at is a response from the government that is completely fear-driven. They're looking at one small piece of the pie. They're looking at the piece of the pie that says, hey, let's just listen to the CDC over here. And the CDC who's botched this and botched that and botched this. Okay, well, let's listen to the FDA, who's basically come out and fought against any private industries that are trying to get tests out, who saw what was coming. That's coming up. And then as far as the community goes, the reaction for the community, you've got your people out there who are always, that are the nosy people. They're out sitting here saying, "Oh, I saw so and so at Walmart today. I can't believe they'd be out there." And you're telling yourself, "What are you doing out there?" And it's just you got this Karen mentality, if you know what I'm saying. And but most of the other community, I mean, they're sick of it. We're looking at a situation where May 1st, and this is just a prediction of mine, May 1st, either they open it back up, or we're looking at unofficially, we're looking at speakeasies popping up, and that's what's going to happen.
So one of the things that has been very frustrating, I've been watching this early on, and the Libertarian Party was out in front of calling for more testing, weeks before even any of the lockdowns happened. The communication from the government hasn't been very clear. They haven't used clear, plain language and said, hey, if you cough or sneeze, you could infect somebody. Don't be in close physical proximity. Don't stay in, confined spaces with air. If you wear a mask or a bandana, it stops you from infecting other people. It doesn't protect you, but it's a good thing to do as a good neighbor. None of that stuff has come out, or it's come out so far after the fact that what I've heard from a lot of people is they hear these orders about what you're allowed to do, but they don't understand what's behind the order. And that leads to, kind of a resentment or a concern that this isn't really something that they should be concerned about. And I know you are involved in local government there. What is your government in Tennessee? What are they doing, and what could they do better on that?
Well, I mean, basically on our local government level, I'm on the city council. My wife's on the county commission. So we're pretty involved on that level. We were one of the first counties to have a task force out. A gentleman of the name of Dr. Duke he's been very informational. He hasn't necessarily put his opinions out. He's literally just putting facts out, which has been helpful. But politicians, the way I've been seeing it, has been completely reactive. It's been completely let's put everything in one big package and throw that at the population, because everyone's different. If you look at the statistics and you start reading into the numbers, there are some people that absolutely should isolate. They shouldn't go out right now, and that's a fact. And there's a lot of people who should be out there, and they should be working, and they should be driving this economy along, because what we're looking at is, again, one small piece of the pie that is just a small part of just the medical side. You're completely ignoring. You want to talk about triage, you're completely ignoring other triage, essential surgeries, or voluntary surgeries that pay bills at the hospital that keep people fed. You're looking at huge economic impacts that no one's even started to look at. You're looking at political maneuvering. And again, it's not saying that the people who aren't taking this virus seriously, we're taking it seriously, but that doesn't mean that we ignore these other key areas over here, these other key areas over here. We have peripheral vision. We can look everywhere and be vigilant of everything. But what you're seeing in this current climate is fear. Everything is fear-based. It's completely fear-driven, and fear is the blindness of caution. Fear is the blindness of logic. And there's no government response that I'm seeing anywhere aside from one Republican senator that decided, hey, maybe we should read this bill. Other than that, it's been completely fear-driven.
Yeah, well, one of the things you brought up is, Carthage, Tennessee versus New York City is incredibly tiny, but you also have this issue of, you've got state government. You've got a governor in Tennessee, and they're, I would imagine, making decisions based on the population centers, based on places like Nashville and what makes sense for Nashville, where you have high population density, high traffic. One of the things that libertarians have been pushing for a long time is this idea that individuals know how to best make decisions about their own life, and lower levels of government may have better knowledge about what the situation is in their community and be able to adapt in different ways. Is either the county commission or the city council, are they able to communicate with the governor and propose different ways to do things? I know here in New Hampshire, some of our local officials have been able to have a good dialogue with the governor and say, this doesn't make sense necessarily outside the population centers, or this is what you're not seeing about how we live life out here. Maybe there's something you can change. Maybe there's something you can do differently. Are you guys having that conversation, or are they not listening?
Well, I would say this, that obviously, being the libertarians in town, we're kind of judged differently, if that makes sense. But that doesn't mean that we are not involved on the state level. Most of my state level in the past has been operating off of ballot access. Most recently, CBD and THC cannabis lobbying is what we've done. But as far as those messages getting out there, I'm literally here in Carthage as a councilman, and I'm being alerted by Facebook that I'm not having a council meeting. We are not even getting emails on it until the last minute. So I've got some preparedness issues that I'm looking at doing. As far as the city goes, one thing that I'd like to do, we've been operating off of these Second Amendment sanctuary cities. We worked on some legislation on that. It did get voted down, but I'm looking at some, possibly some other sanctuary resolutions that basically say, yeah, we don't want to comply with the state's mandates on this because, yes, it is tough here in Nashville. It is tough here in Memphis, but we're not Nashville. We're not Memphis. We live out here for a reason. We have an economy out here that's different. We subsidize a lot of y'all's economy, but right now, you're not giving us anything to subsidize. We just want to live our lives. And if someone's sick, they should go home. If everyone should be washing their hands regardless with hot water, everyone should be drinking hot beverages regardless. It's just common sense. And they're forcing a full boxed package of, hey, isolate unless you're 10 feet away, or isolate unless you're essential, or isolate. And it's just the science doesn't add up. It doesn't.
Well, and I think, that raises this issue. Everybody knows what's essential to them. And it's different what's essential to you versus what's essential to somebody else. And the problem with governments making lists of essential workers is then it becomes really important who gets to make the list. And, one of the things that, just to tap into something we talked about on an earlier edition of the show, if you had good testing for antibodies to know who had been exposed to COVID-19 and had already recovered, you could test an entire community of 2,300 at relatively low expense and actually do what is a much better way to deal with a pandemic disease, which is the test and trace model, where if somebody gets sick, you figure out who they had contact with and you kind of isolate those people. You don't isolate everybody because you don't know anything. And I think one of the frustrations a lot of us have had is this flattening the curve is to buy time. It's to buy time because we had a government that didn't do anything. But what we've done now is we bought time and we still don't have massive testing. We're testing less than 150,000 people a day in the country. We bought time and the federal government is shutting down the drive-through testing centers. They're running out of the stockpiles they said they had, and they're not really doing the testing that's necessary. So I think that's part of where the frustration comes is, they said, trust us, and they're not doing anything with the time that we're buying at great personal cost. I want to kind of open it up to questions from, the audience and kind of bring in everybody. The first thing I want to ask, we'll just go in order: Cole and then Stephen and then Mike, or actually Cole and Mike then Stephen, because it's reverse order of what we started. What are you seeing as far as support from customers? Either patrons of the tavern, other people around. Are they reaching out to you? Are they trying to help you as a business that they value, even though they can't use your services right now, or at least not at the same level?
Absolutely. I mean, we've got a phenomenal customer base. I don't know. We would not exist without them. They've shown us nothing but love, support. They're buying gift cards. They're going out of their way to spend quite a bit of money with us. And I see their checks typically, and they're not as much as they are right now. They're really reaching out, and it's very heartfelt. One thing I do know that people can do for their local restaurants is if they're not operating, buy some gift cards from them. If they are operating, just try to support them at least once a week. And that doesn't mean you're one restaurant. Everyone has 5 or 6 local restaurants. Spread it out, spread the wealth out, and do it voluntarily.
Mike, what are you seeing as far as how the community is reacting to the bartenders that they know and love, and what are they doing for each other or for you guys?
Well, I have seen quite a few of my colleagues they've all been getting a lot of people have been buying them beer and dropping food and beer and alcohol off at the house for them, which has been very nice. We have seen a lot of local restaurants giving away food every single day. There are people, business owners, restaurant owners in the community that are giving food away for lunch and dinner. So just to make sure that people aren't going hungry. And it's funny how hard the restaurants are being hit, especially down here, how generous that they've been. And I mean, just today, I know a friend of mine gave out over 400 meals for free. So it's the outreach has been very good to the community.
I love to hear that story about, people helping each other. Stephen, what are you seeing as far as the community trying to support you or your staff in this time?
Well, I see, the community in Key West is very strong. People are banding together. We have somebody that we know that's actually making cloth masks for us right now, which is a great service. Customers are expressing their appreciation, sending us reviews, letting us know that they appreciate the hard work we're putting in during these times, and we appreciate our customers. And so, it's been positive so far. People are just trying to get through it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to, this service, this ability to just hear from people who are libertarians, who are out there in the community, who are dealing with this stuff is really valuable because, one of the things people have talked about is this idea that it's called social distancing because that's what they decided to call it. But scientifically, really what it is physical distancing, right? Because viruses can't walk by themselves. They only move when we move. What we're trying to do with this is have less social distancing where we're still able to connect with each other, to know that there are other people who are in these similar situations, who may have different ideas, to let everybody know that we're trying to support each other. And we're going to keep doing this. I just want to shout out to Justin Heinrich for, contributing to the Libertarian Party so that we can keep having these broadcasts, keep getting some of these messages out that maybe aren't going to be the biggest, they're not going to be what's in the news, right? The news is talking about what the government's going to do or what the government's not going to do. One of the things, Kara asks a really good question, I think, and this one's probably for, let's say, Stephen and then Cole, because you guys have full service restaurant things. What's reopening day look like, and what are you going to do differently about the dining room or the bar area? How will the floor plan look different to be able to be successful once we loosen up some of these, these guidelines, and it's able for people to come out and be in crowds again, or at least be out and about in restaurants and taverns?
Certainly. So our full service restaurant, the Island Grill, was supposed to be open this summer. We've delayed it until Q1 next year, when hopefully this will be over. We're still in the rebuilding process, which is its own can of worms with government red tape there, which you wouldn't even believe. We've got every government agency coming out of the woodwork that we need to comply with just to get that level. But we've pushed that back till Q1. And my prediction is going to be during the reopening process, I think well into next year and probably for a long time to come, people are going to continue to physically distance. People are going to be wanting to, get back to some semblance of normalcy while still maintaining some safety precautions. And so I'm certain that we've got a ton of seats in the restaurant. And what we'll be required to do is to have our host seat customers in parties separate from other customers. So it might be 2 meters, if not more. We'll probably be putting parties that come in together with good physical distancing from others. So that's going to be an important piece. Sanitation has been huge. So with reopening, we're expected, and I'm sure this virus will be around by then still. Sanitation has already been ridiculously underway so far in the QSR restaurants that we have. We're constantly sanitizing high touch point areas like doorknobs, pin pads, screens, things like that every 30 minutes or even more often. So the safety precautions have been huge, and food safety is a huge part of our industry. So I think with the future of restaurants, full service, and QSR in general, and even hotels, every business is taking, just huge precautions to make sure that their brand or their business isn't the first one to be, someone got COVID-19 after eating here, or the server here got COVID-19, people are afraid of that. Owners are afraid of that. So I think we're going to see a lot higher level of safety precautions as well as physical distancing to continue for the months and years ahead.
What about you, Cole? What do you think it's going to look like for reopening?
Well, I'm a capitalist, so I'm going to figure this one out as far as getting different broad markets. I'm going to keep capitalizing on this delivery market. I'm going to keep going after that. But as far as reopening goes, we're going to go back to business as usual. That's because that's what I feel people are going to want. And I'm talking about our regulars, people that we sit down and we talk with all the time. These are this is our family. And I know it's a big family. You know, we've got a couple hundred people in this family, and we are a small restaurant. But we're going to open up business as usual. We're going to be full service, and we're going to leave that voluntary aspect of, you know what, I don't know if I'm ready to come back out to Ebles, or you know what, I'm ready to get back. I'm ready to get out of here. I'm ready to go hang out with everybody. We're going to leave that decision up to everyone, but we're going to go ahead and continue all the other services that we've been offering on top of it, and we're itching to get back out at it pretty soon here.
Okay. You know, one thing I want to just talk to all you guys about is, you know, what's your outlook for where things are going to go, you know, as we get through this. A lot of experts are saying we're going to have some amount of coronavirus around in society for a year, 2 years. What do you see as the way things are going to go, and what is your outlook on the situation? Let's go with Mike, and then Cole, and then Steven.
Well, I firmly believe that the market will end up mitigating all of these issues, and I think it's really important to stress, you know, how much ingenuity the market really has, in the sense of, I think that if government regulations aren't restricted, that we will move towards an extra legal economy. You'll see people operating things without licenses, performing unlicensed work, et cetera, just to feed their families. And so I do see, though, some room for improvement, though, because I think governments will have to be forced to reduce these restrictions, these undue burdens during this really unique situation. So.
Yeah, I agree with Mike here. I think May 1st comes. People are going to they're going to come out one way or the other, with government permission or without. I mean, it's not going to last this long. People are, the government has kept people just content enough, but right now people are starting to get, they're not as content, and they're going to come to a situation where either they're going to have to bend on a lot of regulations, or businesses will flounder. And if they don't bend on them, I mean, they're going to start looking at options for the next boogaloo, you know.
What do you think, Steven? What's the outlook, you know, for how things are going to be different coming out of this, and how we're going to get through it?
You know, I think it's hard to say exactly. I think that the right answer is nobody knows, but what we can see from the data is that the resource peak that we're going to need over the next 2 weeks, about mid-April, is in the United States, is where we're going to see the most amount of use of ICU beds, ventilators, and regular hospital beds throughout the country. From that point, because the lockdown, it's not really a quarantine, it's a lockdown, because in a quarantine you isolate the sick people, in a lockdown you lock down society. So because of lockdown and all the other measures that people are voluntarily taking, start about 2 weeks ago, I think probably in May towards June, we're going to see a drastic decrease in cases. But the problem then is, what's the exit plan? Because as soon as people start going back to normal, and I think people will change their behaviors, which will keep that curve nice and flat, things are going to increase again. There's going to be more cases. You're going to have second and third waves of infections like we had during the 1918 Spanish flu. So I think ultimately, we can't, it's a false dichotomy to choose between the coronavirus and the economy. It's like, choosing the lesser of two evils. It's not a real dichotomy, because I think we can look at ways that we can mitigate the problems of the COVID-19 disease by looking at other countries, looking at what Japan is doing, what South Korea is doing, using more trace methods and hopefully opening up to the free market. There was a laboratory in Seattle that actually had they were doing private testing for COVID-19. The FDA and CDC shut them down, but they tested anyway, and they found a patient who tested positive for COVID-19. They debated what to do morally, and they ended up telling the state about it. And the CDC and FDA came back again and shut them down after they were already, running tests privately for citizens to help in tracing. So I think the government has definitely impeded on a lot of the space the free market could have taken up here to innovate and provide services for. The World Health Organization had a working test. There was working tests in other countries that were offered that are even being imported now to the United States that weren't taken because the CDC had a monopoly on testing, and they wanted to test for SARS and MERS and SARS-CoV-2, and they botched the tests, and so it set us back a month. And those things do affect us badly. And in the short term, in Florida at least, the unemployment system is terrible. So I don't know what people are going to do when they can't pay rent, they can't pay for food, and they're out of work, and the government, breaks their legs and doesn't even give them the crutch. So in the short term, I think in Florida, we're going to see a huge increase in food banks. I think donations, churches are going to have to step up, because otherwise we're going to have a real civil unrest on our hands. And we want to avoid that as much as possible. In the midterm, I'm hoping we can survive through the situation without ludicrous amounts of federal funding and money printing that we pass on down to our grandkids. And in the long term, I know we will get through this. The 1918 Spanish flu that happened, it killed more people than World War I. It was a terrible influenza, and I think it ravaged the world at a much worse pace than this virus. So I'm confident at the end we'll get through this. It's just a matter of how much government interference are we going to have to face, and what are the economic repercussions going to be. But I think at the end there is a
thank you, Stephen. So one of the things, that we talk about a lot as libertarians is this idea of the economy, right? And the economy, the free market, things change in the market. There aren't elevator operators anymore. There aren't, travel agents is not really a thing anymore because things get different. Uber takes over from taxis. We talk about that in the broad way, but it's really hard to be in that economic dislocation. It's real people who no longer have a job, who have to find a new job. It's business owners who the business that they had, it's not going to be an ongoing concern. One of the things I've been thinking about is, we have some doors that have been shut right now. There are some doors that have been shut, and there's some doors that have been opened. And we can spend a lot of effort trying to reach back and open those doors that have been shut and claw into them, and that seems to be the government's response. They want to bail out industries that may have problems, being viable, like cruise ships. Or we can take that deep breath and look into what's possible. What new things have we not even invented yet? And walk through some of the doors that are open. And so I love what you guys are doing to stay positive, to help in your community. I think it's showing a lot of people that when a real crisis like this comes, where you just can't throw government money at it, it does come down to people and business owners and workers working together in their own communities. Thank you guys for being on. This has been Libertarian Party TV. Tomorrow evening, Libertarian Party Candidate Hour will be on LPTV with host Pat Ford at 8 p.m. Eastern. He's going to have Trisha Butler and Kalish Morrow. Be good to each other, everybody. Stay safe. Look for the helpers, like Mr. Rogers said. Find the people in your community who are doing good things and help them out. Ask for people who can, who check on people, check on your friends, check on people do what you can to help, and together we'll get through this and we'll have a better, freer society at the end of it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and thank you for the support of the Libertarian Party and LPTV.